Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality, and is about discovering your place in this great universe from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guests, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life, and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here this evening. Tonight we are going to be talking about something more than just our physical body, our physical ailments, trying frantically to heal this body, to be able to stay in this existence, in this space and time. What happens when our mind, our thought, our consciousness, our soul, our esoteric essence, our vital force, and that purpose for being get kind of confused, and we say, do we farm it out as mental health and go to someone to talk to? Do we farm it out as spiritual and find a religious person to talk to? Or perhaps we say it's a physical entity and I'm going to have to go to the doctor. I walk in, I share my symptoms, and I'll be able to get something to be able to, quote, fix me. Right now, so many people are on the path of fix-its are not working. These little tiny things of going to people, telling them what you're sensing is wrong, and the answers, the tools, or the products they are giving you are not resonating with you, they're not helping you, and they just can't seem to touch that place deep inside. What truly are we talking about? We're really talking about healing of something other than that which the norm has always called healing. Today my guest is Shawn Murphy from Switzerland. His book is Torn Between Two Worlds, Modern Medicine and Spiritual Healing. What we'll be talking about today is what is the energy of our spirit, our essence, between this world and others, and how can we find a way to connect, to know what's going on around us in a much wider kind of spiritual view. Shawn, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
To be here today, and I'm looking forward to having our discussion.
Oh, Shawn, it's great to have you because I think so many people are saying what was is no longer, and they can't quite figure out the next step. I almost liken it to the abyss. It's almost as if people have said, what I've been doing is no longer. They step through the door, and they kind of fall into this space I call the abyss again. And when that abyss happens, the door slams shut behind them. In other words, there's no going back the old way because you really set your mind and your thoughts on something else. Don't you think that's truly what happened when you were writing all these books? Because you saw something differently and you went forward instead of trying to go backwards, and you expanded your knowing or your consciousness, yes?
It's an interesting point that you bring up, and as you're speaking, that instant happened on 9/11. As soon as that abyss opened up. And it was seven days after 9/11 that I published my first public work. It was in a reaction to a longing felt all around me of people saying, oh God, what happened? How could this happen? Why did it happen to us? And in this empty abyss that I felt around me, I felt the need, an inner need, to speak. And I'm not a writer. I'm an engineer. I'm an analytical person. And I have SAT scores that will tell you that I'm not a writer. But this need came up in me to fill the void that you talked about. Fill it with love, hope, and perspective.
Right. You know, I think also, too, the idea is that many people had that around 9/11. However, they had no way of sticking to the path going forward and allowing that door to shut behind them. And you really let it shut behind you because you really knew in some way that you were being guided in some sort, being able to hear or sense some other form of communication within yourself. Or also, too, the idea is that we say, the old way of being can't be me. And is there something new that we can find out about humans at this time with all the experiences that we're having, all of the hardships, pain, and suffering? I mean, because truly, if you look at it, was it always supposed to be a linear progression in our lives, or were we meant to expand and explore different things? Because your book, Torn Between Two Worlds, is really living a life web versus living a linear life, yes?
Well, yes, it is. It's opening yourself up to all of the possibilities around you. I think one of the issues that I had with family members, that they were diagnosed with a problem and they were given the standard answer. Take this drug, you'll be better.
Mm-hmm.
But, the medical community isn't looking at the entire web of the person. They aren't looking at their family situation, their family history. They're not looking at their emotional state. They're not looking at, what they brought into this life, what their past life experience did to their existing life. And it is a web, there's many, many aspects of ourselves from the inside influencing our health, but also from the outside, from the energies that we surround ourselves with.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I've been in healthcare over 5 decades now. When I look back at it, I can distinctly remember I would give people, they would come in and they'd talk to me, and I'd be seeing things from, that web, and I would have a list of all of these different things, and they're going, oh, my goodness, this is like a job. I already have a job. I just needed you to tell me how to fix it and move on, But also, too, Shawn, I think the essence is that when we look at it, when it becomes your job, so to speak, is it your job to pay attention to yourself and try to find your own healing path, or is it about giving it up to another being, another person, a doctor, a therapist, or a religious person? Because many people are saying, I don't have the time for that, I don't have the knowing or the bandwidth, and someone else knows better than me. When in essence, when we're looking at it, we say that, it's really asking someone else who is giving a broad spectrum kind of, as we always call it, evidence-based medicine, to be able to apply it to everyone and says that should work. When really, once you're into the abyss and that door is shut, you're now learning about your own individuality, your own energy, what is put into your pot, so to speak, and how to navigate all of the energies of your own being. Don't you think that's definitely what you're really talking about in your book, Torn Between Two Worlds?
Exactly. In my book, I dedicate it to the work of Dr. Edward Bach, who created the Bach flower remedy. He wrote in his book, Heal Thyself, that nobody knows more about you than you.
Right.
And he felt that was his responsibility to teach individuals how to heal themselves, how to recognize the stresses that are in their lives, the impacts that they have in their lives, and then guide them to the right remedy that would treat the underlying cause. And that's what my book does. It takes what Edward Bach did as a start and brings it forward into the spiritual life, helping people to realize what are the spiritual influences in my life that are causing negative energies, that are hurting me, or also in the lives of your loved ones. Because many times, as you know, somebody stuck in the abyss can't see out themselves, but they have a network of people around them who can maybe help them to come out.
Yeah, sometimes I think the abyss is a super, I'm going to use the word, but I'm sure there's another one. It's sort of a dangerous place. Because when you get into the abyss, it can be absolutely fabulous, but it could also be dangerous because you aren't sure of who is, quote, as I've always said, who's speaking to me, And I'm sure you've used that and thought about that before, and many people have shared their stories of that. When you hear your thoughts, when you hear or sense something someone else is saying, or you try to tap into that communication of the energy flow, you wonder, is that of light or is it of darkness? Is it of the past? It is of the present? Or is it of some other entity in spirit that may be here to harm or to be able to provide good? I mean, that duality is still out there. I'm not sure we will supersede that duality until potentially we get into another dimension of time and space. But we're talking about right today. We're talking about today. We're saying, who is talking to me? And I think that's so vitally important to explore as you do in your work, is because when someone's talking to you, we talk about addicts, we talk about people who are taking their lives, we talk about people who are doing things that are not good. We say, who is talking to you? Don't you think that's definitely the first place to start?
Well, it definitely is a very, very important question, as you say. And it's a very difficult one to answer. You just picked the topic of an addict. It's hard to hear any voice other than the addiction. That's why it's important to have a web of people around you
right,
who you can trust, so that they are hearing other voices, that helpful voices. Because unfortunately, the harmful voices are actually louder than the helpful ones.
Right.
As you know.
Yeah.
But
also, too, Shawn, don't you think that when you're in that space and time and you have the not knowing, it's sort of like you're still in and around the same energy frequency of that negativity? In other words, when a drug addict wants to be able to quit the drug and all of their support systems are still doing it, it's kind of hard to get into that abyss and say, y'all are all behind the door, you don't exist anymore. Do you know what I'm saying? Because in essence, you're still hearing the wrong messages from the wrong space and time. We know this, with healthcare all the time. People will go in, they'll say, my doctor did this, that, and the other, but he's not listening to me. He can't hear me, but they still keep going in and getting the same treatments, therapies, or whatever, and still abiding by them. So the idea is, do you need to shut off the system, step back and recognize where its basis is, and then make a conscious decision which way you're going to go next?
Well, that is very true, but unfortunately, it's work. I mean, you just can't make that decision and then do it. You have to, and this is what my book is all about, and the second half of it is, all the things that you can do to try and lighten your load, to lighten your energy, and to overcome that dark energy that's there.
Right.
Through meditation, through the use of nature, through plant-based remedies, through mineral-based remedies, and taking the positive energy that exists in the world to lighten your load, so that you can start to hear those softer voices. you're familiar with Byron Katie, and I'm amazed at all these people who spent their entire lives figuring out simple truths. And Byron Katie calls her work simply the work. Mm-hmm. And it's overcoming negativity. Overcoming, when I see somebody, my first thought is to think negative about them. How do I overcome that? And it's work. It takes a long time, as you know, to overcome those negative reactions that we have to other people.
Let's talk about also, too, that's engaging with other dimensions of spirits, or it could be other energies that they've carried forth from other lifetimes, their pain and trauma from other past lives. And it's showing up, and sometimes people are saying, oh, I can read that on them. I understand that, where that's coming from now. I can sense that. But then you engage with it, and then it brings you into that space and time. So the idea is, as you share in your book about possession and about spirits, it's a big deal once you start stepping into those spaces and times and believing it as your truth. Because sometimes when you're in the abyss, you might say, I don't know the direction, and then all of a sudden a spirit or an energy or an entity can show up, and it could say, go this way, go that way. And, you don't know if it's true, not true. So that's, again, who is speaking to me, and does it feel right, does it not feel right? And we have never, I think, as humans in this existence, in this time frame, been given the tools to be able to equip ourselves to be able to make these decisions, to navigate the abyss, to be able to say, is it something more, or is it just, oh man, I just need to go check myself in someplace and let my life play out, right?
Well, that's true. There's a history behind that. It isn't until, the recent centuries that it was acceptable to even think about the spiritual world and about spiritual entities. People were burned at the stake for that, in prior generations. So there's a lot of fear around that subject. A lot of dogma and negative thoughts around the subject of spiritual entities. So, yes, people aren't taught how to test the spirits, how to find out, is this really a helpful spirit who's come to help me, or is this the one who's been harming me my whole life, just putting on a good show? And it's a very difficult navigation. But as I said earlier, the way to overcome that is to become lighter in yourself, to see over the next hill, to see that you've been fooled.
It's almost as if, a lot of times people will say, but you're on the internet, you're kind of like sucking up into all of those old dogmas, and that's a darker energy. But sometimes there's also light there too. So what we find is that we kind of need to touch, feel, and explore for ourselves to learn our own navigation. In other words, no one can give us a template that says, follow me, I'm the guru, this is the way to go, because it's not going to happen. We were pretty much, as souls, we were put here to potentially find our way through all of this with all of these experiences. So for someone to say, I've got the answer for you, no. But we can definitely offer tools and say, these are some tools that I have used and I've explored. When you're talking about, in your book, about feeling energies in the house or knowing something, I have that quite often. I've spoken it on, many times I've shared my stories on the radio. I would be sleeping, I would turn over, feel something on my hip, and it would be, a short dark entity just needing some help, or I would be sitting at the table and I would feel this ice-cold whiff go by, and all of a sudden, I mean, like my whole body was shuddering, so I knew a spirit had gone by. Yet I live in New Orleans, which it's very much connected here on the spiritual and etheric level. And when hurricanes go by, you know, it's like tilling of the soil of all the old energies that start to come up. So I think that once we start to become open and aware, have some of these conversations and say, okay, I'm not crazy. I'm not shutting things down that I'm seeing, hearing, feeling, or touching. What I'm doing is I'm learning to explore the experience and then make a light judgment about where I go next. Don't you think that's what everybody is at the point of right now? Because, you know, here in the U.S., and you're in Switzerland, in the U.S., there's tons of ghost shows on TV. People are becoming aware of those energies around them in their homes, when they meet someone, or even the entity energies that are inside of them that perhaps maybe they need to go visit somebody else. Do you think this awareness is bringing humanity to a point of being more open?
I think we're at the beginning of an age of enlightenment, but we're really at the beginning of it. Mm-hmm. And I look at you know, what was possible in my parents' generation.
Right.
It certainly wasn't possible for them, but is possible for us. Mm-hmm. So, yes, I agree with that. There needs to be, you know, much more learning. And the reason I say that is I've had the people who've come to me seeking help have come because they found me on the internet that I might understand them, and that
right.
You know, I don't think they're crazy. Essentially,
yes.
How this conversation starts,
mm-hmm.
and I don't. You know, I listen. I spend a lot of time asking questions and trying to understand where they're coming from. And as you can see in my book, there's a lot of different things that could be going on.
Right.
And there's a lot of things that can be happening simultaneously. Mm-hmm. And that the one picture in the end of the first chapter gives a good idea of what all can be happening at the same time. And then, you know, I give them the support that I have learned in my life. I spent a lot of time in the area of spiritual healing. Up until recently, only dealing with people inside my family, but now I've reached out to others because I see there's a great need. And like in the past, people would have just not said anything.
Yes.
You know, they would have just closed, you know, gritted their teeth and not had the trust to tell somebody their crazy story. But it's not crazy. Not crazy at all. It's
not crazy
for the
at all.
people living in it. It's a reality. And I mean, it's the people who suffer possession-based schizophrenia, that is the most horrible fate that you can suffer. I mean, it is a silent suffering that you just cannot understand.
Right.
Yeah, I've known a few people and helped a few people with that, but it's a long, long road to recover.
Yes. You know, I think also, too, we've spoken so many times over the 10 years we've been on radio about that which is inside of you. There is no reason for judgment or conditions. It's truly about being able to say, are you free to be open to express yourself? whatever that is. And I think society has really closed us down. I'm sure you've noticed it in your earlier years of work. I noticed it in my earlier years in healthcare, and over the decades, finally I just had to vacate those positions, and say, no, that is not working for me anymore, and I know I'm not helping. So I think the idea is that how can we navigate these? And I think the first step is to understand energy, to know emotions, to know, just as I said before, this is a web of life and how to tap into that. When you talk about Bach remedies, it's so interesting because my daughter, she had sent me a text, I think it was several months ago. And on the text, she says, was I really born in Bethlehem, And I had said yes, and she sent me a picture of the hospital where she was born, and she says, is this it? And I said, yes, the Moravian Star. And the Moravian Star is also the Star of Bethlehem, right? Mm-hmm. Well, and I said, yes, and I started thinking about, living there and Christmas and the Star of Bethlehem, on. And then I kind of set that story to the side. Then it started to come up. I was looking for star. I said, I need a star. And then I started looking into, we need something that glitters. A star has to be light. And this went on, and I kind of progressed through it, and I was checking back in the city where I lived, and I was going to get one of the Moravian stars that had lights inside, right? Well, at any rate, for some reason, I don't know, I was checking something else out, and I was on the Internet, and up came Star of Bethlehem Bach Flower Remedy.
Yep.
And I said, oh, okay, that's how you guided me to that. I said, fantastic. So, so I just got some, and I think sometimes people will say, well, how long am I supposed to take it? Is it going to fix me? What is it going to? Everybody says, what is it going to do to me? And I'll say, I have no idea. All I know is if it's a guidance and you're guided to it, try it out. So I get the Star of Bethlehem, and it was 2 drops. That was all I needed, and set it to the side, and that was it. It just wanted to make itself known. It wanted to show me how I was being guided, and it just wanted to communicate with me. I think sometimes people think that these products are going to do something that's going to alter them, change them, fix them, or whatever, and they'll either have to take it for their whole life or they'll have this monumental miracle, don't you think?
Well, unfortunately, that is the perception that
right.
Mm-hmm. Modern medicine and advertising has given people.
Right.
This ailment, take this, and they'll go away. But
yeah.
The Bach remedies they're long term. They're not ailments. They're long term underlying conditions that mm-hmm. people carry within them. They're their fears.
Right.
There are, people have uncertainty. They can't mm-hmm. make decisions. Some people have despondency. Loneliness. All these things are deep spiritual ailments that people have. And you can drink to make yourself happy. You can take some happy pills. But that depression that's inside of you, it's not going away with those pills. You're just mm-hmm. becoming happy for a short period of time when you're taking the pills. But mm-hmm. what the Bach remedies do is they're going after that deep underlying depression that's within you, the darkness that is causing you to be depressed.
Right. All the time I always have a metaphor, and when I look at Bach flower remedies, I've used them for eons, and it seems that I call it's almost as if it's a spider web in the forest, and when you find the one that you enjoy, you don't have to sit down and check off all of this, do I have this, do I have that, blah, blah, blah. No, if you're being guided, explore it. And then when you find it and you're exploring it, it's like, when you see the sun and it hits a spider web that's just had a bit of morning dew on it, it lights it up.
Mm-hmm.
So I really find that that's the metaphor I try to share with others, is that perhaps maybe that remedy is just, the dew on the spider web in the morning, that now it's going to light something else up. It's going to make it a little bit easier. It's going to shed some of the cobwebs or some of the dust that's gotten collected on there. And to be able to be free and open to something that's very spiritual or something that's very philosophical in your life is, for many people that were stuck in the very linear kind of life, that's a little bit harder for them to step off that pony, so to speak. But once you do, you really find that you're in the symphony of the cosmic energy. And when you're in that symphony of the cosmic energy, you think better, you feel better. You say, I'm not weighted down. I can be free. So some of those old ideas, those old traits, beliefs, pains and hurts and sufferings start to dissipate or even just shake loose, don't you think?
Yeah, they do. But again, this isn't not an overnight change.
Right.
It takes work.
Yeah.
When I look at the amount of work that I did on myself, for many years, each one of them was important, but all they did was maybe peel back one layer of the onion. And it took a lot of layers of the onion to finally get to the core.
Right, but don't you think also, too, people will say, but I got to get to this. I got to get this. I say, where are you going? Where are you going, and what are you trying to get to? Because sometimes that is the seed that keeps you stuck. Instead of understanding that it's a journey, you're still stuck in the idea of the fix-it, Let's talk for a second, Shawn, about the idea in your book. You talk about past life trauma. I can tell you, sure as we're sitting here, I can walk up and down the streets in New Orleans and I can tap right into my past lives. I can see it, I know it, and I hear it, I smell it. And it happens all the time. And I think people will say, but that scares me, or is that just deja vu, or maybe it's a dream or an illusion. I think the idea is that we don't need to carry it as our badge, that we are living from the past life into the present. However, if we can recognize it, then perhaps we can start to filter through how we exist today. Do you think sometimes people get stuck in those old stories and keep replaying them because they don't know that that's a past life trauma, or they don't know how to be able to filter through it and release it?
Well, you opened up an interesting can of worms here with that question. There's two things that I'd like to say. One is the repeated live scenario, and that is somebody who is stuck in a loop. They keep doing the same thing over and over again. If you look back in certain families, and I have one specific one in my immediate family, and you see this pattern of whether it's alcoholism or child abuse or infidelity that goes from generation to generation to generation. That is past life trauma that is trying to work itself out. These souls are being born into the same family, trying to overcome that sickness or lack of virtue.
Mm-hmm.
And tell somebody, and my sister was one of these, who somebody stood up and said, stop,
mm-hmm.
I'm not going to let this pass on to my children.
Right.
And that's the important thing, to look for trends in families, to say, well, this has always been in the family, and why is it in the family? And somebody should stop doing it.
Right.
That's the one part of the past life trauma. The other I mentioned in my book, it's a very dear friend of mine who came to my house one day, and I was talking to her about the work of Dr. Ian Stevenson on reincarnation. And in the discussion, she started unbuttoning her blouse, and I thought, what are you doing?
Right.
And she showed me a birthmark in the middle of her chest. And she said, I was born with this birthmark. And growing up, I always had a pain in my back.
Right.
They did MRIs, she went to chiropractor, and this pain never went away.
Yeah.
Until she went to a spiritual healer. And the spiritual healer said, you have a void there in your back. There's no energy. And the spiritual healer filled that void with energy. And the pain went away.
Yeah.
And you know what that is, but that was a physical trauma. She was killed in her past life, shot through the heart, and the bullet lodged in the spine. And when she was born into a new life, her spirit hadn't fully healed. So she was born with that energy.
Yeah.
And fortunately, she found somebody not too far along in her life to help her to take that pain away. 2 types of past life traumas that get carried forward that need to be recognized to heal people.
They definitely do. And I think a lot of times people are doing a lot of this detox, removing, letting go, but they're forgetting about what I call backfill. Backfill is putting in after you move something out or whatever it is. And backfill is the pink, warm, loving, unconditional love energy that heals it. In other words, that unconditional forgiveness, that forgiving yourself, forgiving whatever, and just filling it with this. I call it a big ball of cotton candy, so to speak, because when you think of a hole and you put some cotton candy in it, it creates the fascia. It creates the network again. It creates the matrix of your body. It kind of brings back that web back together. I think so many times people are having a lot of therapies, treatments, spiritual, medical, physical, whatever, and it's leaving more voids and more entry points than ever. Just as, people will say, I walked down the street and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I don't feel good. Well, of course, you walked into a vortex because you were too open. You sensed it. You knew it and plop, But in essence, if you were of more light, you could have walked through it and maybe not recognized it, or whatever. So I think the idea is that we need to also understand that for every bit of work we do, to be able to backfill and complete, to heal, to close up all of those entry points, because all of those entry points, just as you shared, from the past lives can keep going forward too. But if we start to heal them, clear them, and seal them, we may have a better existence at this moment in time, don't you think?
Exactly. I mean, that's what I've written in my book as far as recommendations of how to, in all aspects of your life, to bring light into it and to backfill, as you said. Because light destroys darkness. And bringing that in is just so important. Cleaning your house, opening up the windows, letting the negative energy get blown out by the wind, and bringing that into your consciousness. This is what I want to do by opening the windows. I want to clean my house. Let this negative energy get out.
Right.
It's very important.
Yeah. I think the idea that, all of this other stuff out there exists around me, I get it. I know about ghosts and spirits, and, that's great, whatever. They don't bother me. And, I know about plants and everything, but if they die, I don't have time because I'm going to work. And I think people get stuck in the doing world instead of the being. And just as you shared, a lot of this that we're talking about today is about being in awareness. And once you're in awareness, yeah, it's work. But is it work in the sense of the drudgery that it doesn't feel right for you, or is it work in the essence that this is your purpose and your mission? That's two different things, because once you have the knowing and the awareness, you're doing this with intention. You're doing this with the positivity and the higher realms. But some think about, oh, yeah, this is work, and they've got, I don't want to do it. This is a pain in the neck. It's not going to work. This is stupid. I'll just go along with it. What's the deal? So I think that's two different ways to be able to approach what you and I are talking about today, about healing from all dimensions of time and in all of our essences, right?
Yes, that's true. And it's people talk about doing something that gives you energy, as opposed to doing something that drains your energy. Mm-hmm. So if you're in flow or whatever you call it, if you're performing your purpose, and everybody's purpose is different.
Right.
You're performing your purpose, you feel joy and satisfaction, and that gives you positive energy. And so that's a great way to overcome negativity. Yes, mm-hmm. Yes, you may be suffering, but if you're helping somebody who's worse off than you are, and you can get joy from that, that's the way mm-hmm. of overcoming your suffering.
Yeah. I think also, too, the idea says that people are giving and giving and giving, and then they end up depleting themselves. Just as we know, when I do acupuncture, hey, you can have a zapped out chi. You can be your adrenal. You could have adrenal stress, and you could be a zapped out cortisol. And you can't get. You got to understand that those things do deplete. And the answer is, I'll just get some more. Kind of maybe not, So the idea is that how can we assist ourselves, nourish our mind and our spirit, and be able to bring into ourselves that which is of good for us at this time. I think the idea is that if we look at the last several years, the health conditions and what was going on in society with the pandemic, people didn't go to fast food restaurants. People didn't eat out. They learned how to cook for themselves and what they really liked. And then when fast food opened up, they're like, I don't think I really want to go back there again, mm-hmm. Or the idea of let's clear out our closet so it feels too cluttered in here. And they start to learn how to do that. So there are so many more awakened people, so to speak, in the world. And I think that's going forward, we will continue to have these events that will show up and say, oh, now look at this. Oh, now look at that. And to see them as that instead of the other, oh, well, this is horrible, this is going the wrong way, blah, 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 and blame someone. I mean, you can't heal by blaming someone or something else because those two can't exist. They're disharmonic, don't you think?
Well, that's true. That's true. Going back to your point of people getting drained when they're helping other people, mm-hmm. I make it a baseline when I do my work is that I fill myself with divine energy, and I don't give any of my energy to anybody. Mm-hmm. I give that divine energy to somebody. So I don't get drained when I do work because that mm-hmm. energy is not coming from me.
Right. I think the idea that a lot of people are talking about, well, I've got burnout. Well, burnout is the first sign that there's something else out there. And you're willing to say, okay, this is my wall. I hit it. And to sit down and rest and to find out what comes next. instead of the old adage, and I'm sure you're of the decades to be able to know this, push through, it's going to be okay, or, a little hurt and a little pain isn't too bad for you, just keep going. And the answer is no, those are the old techniques. Don't you think those ways and those words are starting to, as we would say, wane in the past?
Well, there are some very wise words and old sayings. There are some totally screwed up ones, like you are what you eat, or what you just said. The thing that I think is quite important is to be able to acknowledge what's happening in your life as a way station. This is time for me to. The universe is giving me a signal that I should stop and think. So this burnout's a very good example of it. Yeah. Why am I burnt out? Am I really doing the right thing in my life? Because for me, people who are in burnout are ones who aren't getting joy from what they're doing.
Right.
I've worked in a number of places where it just cost me energy to work there. Whether it was the people or it was the work was not fulfilling, but the universe is giving you a chance to say, maybe I should look for a more fulfilling job or a more fulfilling career. Or maybe I need to find something in my life that gives me fulfillment afterward.
Right.
I think if you have fulfillment, you can't get burnt out.
Right. But also, too, I think that burnout is essential because many times people will say, but I want to avoid it at all costs. But it's essential in soul growth. In other words, you can't know where you are or what you're doing until you go through the process. And then it's when you look back at it in retrospect that you come up with the aha moments, kind of speak,
Exactly.
Or those ideas that, oh, yeah, this was a gift, this was a great thing. But we can't live our life every day judging yesterday. We have to go through it going forward. So I think the idea is that we can't always know everything. We're really, truly navigating the world of the unknown right now. And that brings people to, I think, the point of fear. And fear is a great manipulator. Fear is your fear of the dark, your fear of the spirit, your fear of your own thoughts, your fear of what others would think, your fear of, you can go down that rabbit hole a zillion times. But in essence, each time you notice a fear, you say, I always say, fantastic. I'm so excited you found that fear. Because now let's sit down and look at it, and let's hold its hand and say, what are you trying to tell me? And then all of a sudden, some of them just dissipate, and you don't even know what you were talking about. Some of them get a little louder until you say, but that's not my fear, Or others will say, finally, I see what you're trying to say, but you don't have control over me, and you release it. You go outside and you break a glass on the sidewalk or something, and you release it, So I think the idea is that we've given our emotions, words, and past stories so much power over our present existence that we can't even recognize that it is not the I am. It is not our soul existence. It is not where we are navigating from or going to be navigating from. It's the way it used to be. Don't you think?
Well, definitely. That's how I ended my book, because this is not something I can tell people specifically.
Right.
But what I recommend is go and do something that allows you to get self-discovery. Whatever that might be. Push yourself, outward bound or take the Hoffman process. Push yourself in a direction and try and learn more about yourself. Because in the end, you actually know everything you need to know. It's all there. But you have to peel back the onion and find it. It's in you.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely something that we will say this is such an exploration of life, and where are we going? And it's like, who knows? I don't know. I can't tell you where you're going. I'm just telling you I'm on the same ship, you know? I think the idea is that so many people want definitive answers, but what you and I share today is truly about how to explore and navigate. And I hope that others are able to say, you know, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not broken. I don't need to be fixed or to conform or to be that which, whatever that is, you know, that I'm going to be okay. And that's what we're really trying to say is you're okay in the long run, don't you think?
Well, that is the issue that I talked about also in my book, and it's one that's near and dear to my heart. And that is being able to accept everybody for who they are and the gifts that they have. And not, you know, it just fills me when people, you should be happy because you exist. It's like, you don't know what gives me happiness. I don't know what gives you happiness. You have to find out what is fulfilling for you. And it's a mistake that a lot of parents make in projecting themselves on their children and expecting their children to have the same likes and dislikes that they have. But they don't.
Right.
And we need to support our children to help them find ways to be fulfilled so that, you know, they can live a happy life, and regardless of what that life is. But a life without fulfillment is misery.
I think, Shawn, in closing, I think that the world is really opening up. It's really shifting and changing. When you and I, you know, were younger, it was totally a different ballgame. But we don't want to look back at the past with the eyes of today. We want to just look at it going forward. And I think your book, Torn Between Two Worlds, really starts to shine the light on the potential, shines the light on saying, hey, maybe there is another way. So if anyone's looking for those coins to turn over, or, you know, or that little glitter that's in the night, it's definitely a great start. So can you share with the listeners how to find out more information about your work? That would be great.
That's very nice of you to say. I'm available on Audible, on Amazon. Just search for Torn Between Two Worlds, and you'll find the 4 books that I've written in this series, which starts peeling back the onions on the fallacies that exist in our materialistic world that we live in. And if you want to connect with me directly and have a talk about your situation, on my website, tornbetweentwoworlds.com, you can contact me, and you know, we can have a discussion. I'm happy to help.
Very good. Well, Shawn, it was such a pleasure to have you with us today. I think it's these types of conversations really help to inspire and enlighten others to be able to go forward within their own lives and start to ask questions. And that's truly what we're asking, is that can you become more aware? So I thank you so much for joining us today to share that conversation.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I do want to say one final thing. 4 years ago, I couldn't have had this discussion.
That's correct.
It wasn't in me.
Yep.
And you know, it's a long journey, and the journey is just so interesting. What doors open up if you're willing to go through them.
Absolutely. And it's definitely not an overnight thing. So to understand that this, as we said, you know, it's your life is about the journey, or it's not about just being able to get to a spot and everything will be great. So we're all here just to guide each other. So we thank you so much for being a guide. If you'd like to find out more information about Shawn Murphy, his book is Torn Between Two Worlds, Modern Medicine and Spiritual Healing. Please do click on the link on the bottom of today's show page to go directly to his website for more information and find out about his work and to purchase his book. It truly is about being able to say, how can I navigate my world today? I want to do it with eyes wide open, going forward, and try to lighten my load. Can you help me? definitely, as Shawn has shared, he can. He's in Switzerland. I also, too, do all of this work. I've been doing it for eons, so to speak. And if you'd like to connect with me, my website is also on the bottom of today's show page. Truly, it's about asking questions, getting out there and saying, I think I want to talk to some other people, listen to some other stories. And that's what we're sharing. It's about get out there and open up your ears and your eyes and be able to say, wow, that's exciting, and to follow that little pebble and see where it takes you. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit drjeanettegallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.